I was in the international ward, and some of the members are from Nigeria. And so one of them made us a food called okudo. And okudo apparently means, in one of the languages, I want to say Igbo, it means everything inside. And so one of the members had us help him make it with him, and we found out exactly what's inside. He put a whole chicken in, bones and all, several peppers, lots of spice, yams, like not sweet potatoes, but like really big gourd yams from Africa, and this kind of leaf called bitter leaf, and he just stewed it all together in a pot, and just we ate that, and it looks disgusting, but it tasted so good. I mean, if you like spicy food. I was in a city, and in the middle of summer, and we go outside, and it was kind of gray, and we started walking down the street, and it just got grayer and grayer and darker and darker. Finally, I looked up at the sky, and it was green, and I was like, "Oh, it's about to go. It's about to just downpour." And so we got into the streetcar that was right next to us, and as soon as we did that, it just came down with hail and winds and everything, and just everything was blowing. And we were actually going to a destination, so we had to get out at a point, and the storm was still going 15 minutes later or so. And so we had to go out, and we went out and ran to the street corner. So about across the street, basically. But in the 20 seconds it took for that, we were both completely drenched, despite it. It was only 20 seconds, and we just were soaked from head to toe. Just shocked at what had happened. There was one time when we were on exchange. In German, exchange is called an Austausch. And I was in a different city, and my companion was going to, also in a different city that, in our area that was where a investigator was living, and they were going to give him in a baptismal interview. And so we were waiting at the train station in this one city, and we got on the train all ready to get out, and we waited, and the time passed for the train to go, and it hadn't left, and we were like, something's not right. And I looked up, and the train was not heading south like it was supposed to. It was heading north. And if we had taken that train, we would have ended up in the Frankfurt mission. So we got right off, and we were stuck, and we were kind of thinking, okay, well, we'll just take the next train. It will be a little bit late, but we'll just have to do that. So we waited for the next train, and then we were told, and then we called, and they said, well, it's going to be kind of tricky. Maybe we shouldn't do this. And they're like, well, shouldn't we exchange? I mean, it's already been 24 hours. And like, hold on, give us a minute. And the train was leaving any second now. So we had to kind of think, like, okay, should we do this? Should we not? And finally, at the last second, they're like, okay, get on the train. And we go to reach and push the button to open, and it leaves. And so that was the last train for like 2 hours. And so we called them back, and they're like, okay, well, we're just gonna have to make this a 48-hour exchange. And so I stayed in that city for another 24 hours. And by the time I was home, I was just ready to take a nap. I was in a city called Augsburg, and I just received a brand new, fresh off the boat companion. And the bishop asked him to give a talk, and he was downright scared. He was pretty limited in his German. He was very nervous about his German, more than I was at the beginning of my mission. And so he asked for help, and I said, okay, well, yeah, well, I'll definitely help you. I'm not going to just let you flounder, but you've got to give the speech yourself. You got to do it confidently. And so he wrote out what he wanted to write, and I translated it for him. And it worked out really nicely, except for one part. It was about faith. And so he wanted to put in Ether 12:7, which says, "For it was by faith that Christ showed himself unto our fathers, after he had risen from the dead, and he showed not himself unto them until after they had faith in him. Wherefore it must needs be that some had faith in him, for he showed himself not unto the world." However, I miswrote it, and I gave him Ether 11, verse 7, which says, "And they hearkened not unto the voice of the Lord because of their wicked combinations. Wherefore there began to be wars and contentions in all the land, and also many famines and pestilences, insomuch that there was a great destruction, such as one had never been known upon the face of the earth. And all this came to pass in the days of Shiblon." And people just started looking up and started looking around. And like, they were very confused. They tried to be nice, very polite, just not wanting to say anything. But he was so terrified he didn't even realize he had made a mistake, and that I had made a mistake, honestly. And I realized it, and I was just laughing to myself, just thinking, I just made the biggest mistake, and I ruined his poor little life. One of the big ones I was known for, or that I really focused on that other people recognized, was obedience. I really strived for obedience to the mission rules and all of that. A lot of missionaries would kind of waver on those, not in a bad way necessarily, but they tended to make more lenient judgment calls and all of that. I was pretty hardcore on the rules. I was like, no, we've got to follow things. We've got to have a joint teach in order to teach this person, or we've got to make sure that we don't make mistakes, do things that we would regret. And so it became kind of my motto, my rule kind of for me was just to be obedient, to try and to have exact obedience, because I felt like that was going to benefit us the most in the long run. And I hope it stuck with me. I feel like in many ways it has, because I feel more obliged to do things, not just because it's what I'm told to do, but because I actively want to do them. So aside from intellectual things like language, I have to say social skills. I'd have to say, before my mission, I was a lot more introverted, a lot more to myself. I was satisfied to stay at my computer all day and watch movies or read a book or whatever. But on the mission, I had to deal with, well, first of all, companions. Most of them were very different from me, very different in personality and interests, etc. And I had to be around them 24/7. I had to talk to people on the streets. I was not accustomed to that. I was not necessarily afraid, but I was not used to it. I had to try and get people to try to inspire the ward, try to uplift them and make them want to do missionary work. And so I really gained a lot of skill through that, a lot of understanding how to talk to people, what to say. I think one of the normal things everyone says is disappointment. Disappointment for people that you care a lot about, but that don't take the steps that you wish or that you hope for that they'll take. One of the ones I saw a lot was in less active members, where they were such good people and they loved the church, but they wouldn't come because of some offense or some little detail of doctrine that didn't make sense to them, or something that they read, who knows, something like that. And they just wouldn't come, no matter how much they loved everything else involved with the church. They just wouldn't do it. And you poured your soul into wanting to bring these people back, and you worked so hard for it. And they wouldn't, or they would, but it was just for a moment, or a fleeting glimpse, and you just felt so bad because you knew that they just weren't ready, and you had to move on. You don't want to, but you have to. You learn when it's right to have to let them go. I would say really good advice for anyone who's preparing to go is to use the studies that they give you. Every missionary studies a couple hours every morning. You study at least an hour in your scriptures and an hour for language study. And of course, you'll want to do a study with your companion. That's also equally vital. But sometimes missionaries will schedule things or have to schedule things. Sometimes that's forced. Well, they'll have to skip over that or postpone it to the side. And I would just say to always put in studies to make sure that those are done, whether you do them on the train or you have to do them anywhere else. Because If you don't, then you'll feel that hindrance. You won't be able to know your stuff as well. You won't be guided as easily by the Holy Ghost, because the Holy Ghost will help you and inspire you to know what to say and when to say it. But if you don't know it in the first place, or you haven't even given your own effort, you'll never get there. So you have to be sure to put in your own effort and always do your studies. Just to keep up the studies, just not to put it down or forget about it. It's really easy, especially when you have to put classes earlier than you would normally have to put appointments as a missionary. But I would say it's definitely important to read the scriptures every day, even if it's not an hour like you wanted to or did as a missionary. I would definitely say to at least do the 15-20 minutes. That's kind of recommended. I would also say to keep up the language skills, because you never know when those are going to come in handy. I've run into so many people who speak German as of recent, and I'm always so happy because I've kept it up. I've been able to use them, and so I don't just stumble awkwardly upon phrases. I actively try and work on speaking with them, and so I feel like that's one of the reasons I learned German, is so that I could do that.